In the last video, either on purpose or on accident, I forgot to mention compression when talking about mixing acoustic guitar. Part of that was intentional because I don't use compression very often at all on acoustic guitar. Acoustic guitar is this beautiful instrument with lots of harmonics and overtones. And compression seems to mess that up for me, to my ear, and make it sound less good. So I use it only in a few circumstances. So let me show you the type of compression I use. I call it butter compression whenever I am compressing acoustic guitar, but keep in mind that I think acoustic guitars sound better with a little EQ and no compression, probably 90% of the time. Okay, let me show you that 10% of the time so you can now use butter compression on your acoustic tracks. In case you missed the last video in this series, I'll put a link below and create a playlist for this short little series on recording and mixing acoustic guitar. Here is the current state of this guitar that we recorded. Ooh, that's such a good guitar part. Okay, so I think that sounds great and that will work in a mix. One thing, since I tend to do more the top-down, backwards mixing approach, all the acoustic guitars that I mix will have some compression just because they're all going to go through my mix bus, which will have a compressor on it. So that's kind of the asterisk underneath what I said at the beginning of the video. However, there are a few times where I do like compression on acoustic guitar, but first let me show you the things I don't like about compression on acoustic guitar. To my ear, compression tends to sound very obvious when you put it on acoustic guitar. So a typical compressor setting would be, 4-to-1 ratio, 30 millisecond attack and release. Let's bring the threshold down until we see a decent amount of compression, right? So we bring up the gain to make the volume before and after roughly the same, and this is the sound we got. Now you can mess with attack and release and do less compression, more compression, but that's typically, what we do, right? If I'm using a compressor, I want it to do something. The problem is I don't like what the compressor does to acoustic guitar. I don't like the way it feels squished and small and feels a little more fake to me. You may love that sound. I've heard plenty of records with a compressed acoustic guitar. It really is a personal taste thing, but I don't love compression on acoustic guitar most of the time. Now, if I'm working on a song where the acoustic guitar is a part of a much bigger, dense mix where there's lots of, say, electric guitars, drums, bass, keys, there's a lot going on, and it's more of just almost a rhythmic part of the song where you hear the pick on the strings almost more than anything else in the acoustic guitar part once you listen in the mix. Those are times where I'll use what I'm calling butter compression to get a smoother sounding compression sound out of those acoustics that in the mix just lets them sit right there at that constant volume that you want. And since you're not hearing them by themselves, any compression artifacts that are there aren't that big of a deal. This type of compression I learned from my buddy Kevin Ward over at mixcoach.com. Check him out. He's legit. And he'll do this with like an SSL compressor, but I'm going to show it to you with this regular stock compressor right now. So the idea is bring your ratio all the way down. That means where if you look at instead of like this, it's like this, okay? So it's not doing any compression. Then bring your threshold all the way down. Now, if I hit play, all things being equal, it's going to sound exactly the same. Nothing's happening, right? Now, the trick, if there was a trick, go with a pretty normal attack and release, 30 and 50 milliseconds, nothing crazy fast. And the trick here is to, as the guitar's playing, to turn the ratio up just ever so slightly. So I don't know how well you can see it, but right now it's at 1.2 to 1. Whenever I do this, it usually gets to no more than like 1.5 to 1 before I find the sound that I want. But listen to what happens. As we get more gain reduction, it actually is a really smooth sounding compressor. So roughly the same amount of compression we had before. It hit about 6.5 dB of gain reduction, but to my ear, it sounds a lot smoother. Here it is without the compressor, and then I'll turn the compressor back on. So what to my ears I hear, I'm saying the words to my ears too much. What I hear when I do this is a lot of the good parts of compression without some of the bad parts. The other compressor setting that we had, you could hear the compressor slapping down the guitar every time there was a down strum. So every time you see these peaks right here, it was sucking the guitar down and then letting it back up. This one, since the guitar is always across the threshold, there's always a little bit of compression happening regardless of what the guitar is doing. It's much smoother. So we still get some compression on the louder peaks, but we're getting some compression on the quieter stuff as well. And all in all, it just sounds smoother to me. So this time I'm going to play it again. I'm going to start with no compression, then I'm going to turn the compressor on. And what I want you to listen for is how much smoother it sounds, how the low end still seems to be full, but it's a little more contained, and then the pick noise feels a little more crisp and a little more detailed. Those are the things I'm getting out of this compression. So it's right there at the end, but you could hear the pick noise comes through a little bit more and it feels a little more contained. If I drop that into a big mix with drums, bass, and electric guitars, you would hear the acoustic consistently throughout and it wouldn't get lost, which is what can happen with an uncompressed acoustic. All right, so that's my butter compression technique. You can use that on acoustic guitars. You can use it on vocals, background vocals. You can even use it on your electric guitar bus. There are a lot of places you can use that if you want just a subtle, smooth, consistent sounding compression. And you can do it with a really simple compressor like this. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you want to get better recordings and mixes by this weekend, check out my recording cheat sheet over at recordingcheatsheet.com. Even if you just apply one of the things you learned from that, you'll get better recordings and mixes by the weekend. Check it out. Thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.